Hi Stampers, it's Linda Schmidt with Stampin' with the Hounds. I have a fun fold card for you today that is going to be using some of our new colors that just came out this month from Stampin' Up. So this fun fold, it's been around for a while. This one, I've seen it called a few different things, but I'm calling it the pop-up and pivot because the centerpiece does kind of wobble, kind of goes up and down a little bit on the bracket that it's on. And then it's just another fun way to use your dies and your specialty paper and designer series paper to show them off. So this is the one we're going to be doing today. This uses some of the dry brushed specialty paper that is available online. The Botanical Layers stamp set. This is one that carried over, and it's a nice set to use. And then we'll also use, oh, that's it for that one. So that's the one we're gonna be making, but I did wanna share with you a few other samples because there are different ways that you can, it doesn't always have to be a circle die. So on this one, I did the retired layering diorama dies. Oh my gosh, I'm so bummed that those retired. They were my favorite dies. So yeah, I'm gonna be keeping mine because I love to use them. And then this uses the stamp set, sorry, what is it called? Wildlife Wonder. And this is another one that carried over, which is kind of nice because this is a great masculine set. And on this one, I did a little bit of some leafing, golden or gilded leafing flakes on it to give it a little spick. And then I used some of the retired little gems, or not gems, but the little rocks. And so this one, again, kind of pivots. And then it's kind of showing that layering diorama. This is another one that shows some of our new colors and in the moment stamp set, which is another one that carried over. This has got the Lost Lagoon, which they brought back. I love that color. And then look at me, more wild wheat. And Pebbled Path, which is a really pretty color that's on. And here's another one. So this one I just used the circle dies. And then I did do a scallop circle, which that retired too. I'm so bummed. But anyway, I still tend to use a lot of my retired items because a lot of my people still use their stuff too. And I like to show them different ways of using it. And then this one is a one that's retired. I love this. I dreamt of this card. And I got up in the morning and I just had to recreate it. So this is using the Glimmer in Color Poppy Parade, or not, I'm sorry, Sweet Sorbet circle. And then I did that Crane of Fortune. And on this one, I did decorate the inside of it as well as the outside with that. So that's another really pretty one. And again, here, just got that little pivot. And then I tried it with a rectangle die. This one, this was one of my first ones I did. And I think when I did this one, I needed to move my bracket, my little arm, down farther, but it still works. But this one, again, I was just kind of playing around with it. And then this is another one of my earlier ones that I was kind of playing around with, using up some old vintage butterfly paper. And again, just kind of showing that little pivot. So it's kind of fun. I love cards that move. So we're gonna get started. So your supplies that you're going to need. And again, you can do your card, whether it's, you know, the landscape style, or you can do it the portrait style. Either one works. So I'm gonna be doing the portrait today. So this is my card base is going to be the 4 1/4 by 11, folded in half at 5 1/2. Otherwise, if you were doing it the other way, this style, it would be the 5 1/2 by 8 1/2 and then scored in half. So that we're just gonna, and I've already scored this one. So I'm just gonna fold it. Then, and you can do different layers. So I like to do triple layers. So I've got my designer series paper, and then I've got a 1/4 sheet of cardstock, and then my card base. Now when you do this, you have to be, when we do the dies, I'm going to show you some tricks because it is going through a lot of layers of cardstock. But otherwise you can just do one layer of designer series paper, and that's going to be the 4 by 5 1/4. So this piece can either be cardstock or it can be your designer series paper. And then I've got the same size. This is going to be for my inside of my card. And then if you want to do another DSP layer, that's going to be the 3 1/4 by 5. And that's what I'm going to be using today. So this is, I didn't want to put my Post-it note on here because it, I learned the hard way. It lifts off the foil. So just be careful when you're using like any of like your low tack tape. It does peel off. So you have to be really careful with this foil paper because it's a little bit thinner paper and it's got that foil look to it. So again, that's 3 3/4 by 5. Then for the mechanisms, you're going to need, and this is going to be the same color as your card base. So I'm using Pebbled Path, and this piece is 3 by 4, and then we score at 1, 2, and 3 on the 4-inch side. So that's going to be the shelf for the card. And then the little arm that your pop-up piece adheres to, this is 3/4 inch by 2 1/4, and then we're going to score at 1 1/4. So that's for the arm on there. So when you make these, and I kind of did a little cheat sheet here. So this is going to be what I call the shelf. So this was that 3 by 4. And then we score at 1 inch, 2 inch, and 3 inch. And then you just do valley folds to basically make this little cube. Okay? Then what you're going to do is once you have those folded, glue goes here, and then glue goes on the other part. And I'll kind of show you how that works. But the glue is going on the back side, and then this is just what kind of folds up to make that shelf. And then your L bracket, so again, this was 2 1/4 by 3/4 inch, scored at 1 1/4. Glue is going to go on the short side, and that's going to be on the card. And then the longer piece is what we glue our pop-up piece on it, and it kind of goes like that. Okay, so let's get started. So like I said, we're going to, since I've got my triple layers here, when I do my adhesive, I only want to do adhesive around the border because we're going to be die cutting that circle out. So I'm just going to run adhesive around the border of this 1/4 sheet of cardstock, and then that's going to be attached onto my card front. And then I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine with just these 2 layers, because I found when I did this on top of it, this die, it was really struggling cutting through all 3 layers. So I'm going to do the 2 layers right now of cardstock, and I position the circle so that it's about 1 inch from the top of your score line, and then it's just centered. And then I just use some of my low tack tape, and then I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine. So let me grab that. Kind of zoom out a little bit here. Okay. So make sure we're centered on here. All right, so we're just going to die cut this. Sure these popped, cut through both layers, and it catches just a little bit. I think on this circle die, it has seen, it is pretty old. So I'm just going to take a little hobby blade and just kind of help cut through that. Yeah, so this is going through 2 layers of cardstock. So when it does just the 1 layer of cardstock with the DSP, I don't have any issues. It's just when I'm doing the double layer of cardstock that I run into where it just isn't quite sharp enough, or it's gotten dull over the years. There we go. And then I'm going to keep these because I'm going to use them as layering pieces for my pop-up. And then I'll just take a little nail file, kind of sand those rough edges on my card. Okay, so now we want to do our designer series paper, and we want to make sure that it's going to, that circle's going to be in the same spot. So what I do is I just kind of do a little pencil and I just trace on the back side so that I know where to cut for my circle. And notice I'm doing the back side because that foil, if you use that low tack tape, it does pick up that foil. So I'm just going to die cut from behind. Now this circle I'm just going to save for another project, and then this is going to be attached then onto the card. So let's get this out of the way. Okay, and then I can zoom back in. Okay, so now we can go ahead and adhere this onto our front of our card. And I'm just going to use liquid glue for this part, just because this paper is a little bit finer and I don't want to take the risk of accidentally tearing it when I'm using my tape runner. Plus I can get up around this circle a little bit better. All right, and then we'll just take our tweezers. And then you just want to center that. Okay. So there is the front of the card. Now you noticed on this one I did add a little bit of ribbon on here, and it's okay. It didn't really affect the mechanism. So if you want to add ribbon, you can. And the reason why I did this, that's where I ripped my foil. So it's kind of covering my little boo-boo. But so if you wanted to add ribbon, since Lost Lagoon was an in color from years ago and they brought it back to be a subtle color now, I still had some of the ribbon left over from when we carried it before, so I'm using up my ribbon. All right, and this is just going to be a little double knot. So I just and this is a nice fine ribbon too, so it doesn't get, it's not bulky, so it won't interfere with your pop-up and your pivot piece. So I'll just tie a knot. And then I can just trim off these ends. And I always, on my scissors, I always put these are my ribbon cutting scissors, so I always put a little piece of ribbon on my handle so that I know that these are only for ribbon and not for paper. Okay. Then I'm going to add, so this is my inside piece that I do, and you can do white or vanilla. This is actually gray granite to use. So I'm going to actually stamp on this first before I adhere it into the card, because I'm stamping kind of off the paper a little bit. So I'm using my Lost Lagoon, and I'm just going to stamp a few leaves. Love Lost Lagoon, so pretty. And wipe up so I don't get the ink. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead, and this can just be then attached inside your card. So if you're going to do any type of stamping, I would recommend do that first before you adhere it to the inside of your card. Okay, so now we're going to make our little shelf. So this is where we're going to need our your paper trimmer with a scoring tool, or you can use your Simply Scored. I'm just going to use this paper trimmer just because it's handy. It's at my desk. All right, so this was that 3x4 piece of paper or cardstock, and this is on the 4-inch side, so I want to score at 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to score at 1, 2, and 3. Then on your little arm, the L arm, which is 3/4 inch by 2 1/4, you're going to score at 1 1/4. And that's it for the scoring. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to fold on each one of these score lines. So I'm going to score, or fold, sorry. I'm gonna use my bone folder. I wanna make sure these are nice and crisp, and I'm just doing valley folds all the way across. So then when it's folded in half, there shouldn't be any overlap. Everything's lined up, okay? So now this is what becomes our little shelf. So I'm going to keep it folded in half, and you're going to open up your card, and this is where you want to, so the folded edge is facing you, and you want to make sure that you've got, so here's your card crease. You want this edge just so that it still closes. So make sure it doesn't impede when you close the card. So now you're going to put glue on this back side one, okay? So if I'm looking at it, this is folded in half. We're going to put glue on this back side one first, okay? So this can be tear and tape. You can use, actually I think I will use tear and tape on this one. So this is one that's going to be attached to the inside of your card. So tear and tape, liquid glue. You want a strong adhesive. Okay, so this was the adhesive. I'm going to flip it over, and I want to center this so that it's not impeding when it folds down. It's, for the most part, I'm trying to do this so you can see it with the camera. For the most part, you're centered, and that looks good. So then we're just going to, whoops, try that again. Is that a bad angle? Okay, there we go. All right, so I'm just gonna press that down. So now just that 1 inch section is adhered to the inside of your card. Then you're gonna keep this folded in half, okay? You only want adhesive here. Now what I've been doing is I've actually been putting the adhesive on this because then it just closes down, and I know that I'm not going to have adhesive oozing out. So again, here, because I'm pressing stuff down, I like to use the tear and tape. So I'm actually going to put the tear and tape on the card part. And it's going to be the width of my piece. And it's right above this score line is where that adhesive is, so that when it comes down, it's going to be attached to here. And then you can also run a little bit more because we want this top part to make sure it doesn't fall apart. So I'm just putting it up on the top. I was finding that was working out better than actually putting it on the shelf itself. And then I'm just going to bring this down. I just take my bone folder and make sure it's nice and pressed down. And now when you open it, you've got your shelf made. Okay? Then we're going to do our bracket. And so this is, again, that 3/4 by 2 1/4, and this was scored at 1 1/4. The shorter tab is what is being glued onto the shelf. Okay? So this is going to fold up. The long side is going to be what you attach your pivot piece. So short side is going to have glue on it. And this is where I do the liquid glue because I need a little bit of wiggle room when I'm adhering this. So we've got our L. This is the short side. And you're just going to position this so that this is just below this score line and centered. See, so it's just below the score line. It's going to overlap just a titch on the bottom. Okay. All right, so that's the mechanism. Now we need to do our stamping for our focal piece. Okay, so then that just kind of stays up like that, and it opens up. And you've got that little overhang, and then that piece is on there. And so it still kind of sticks up when it's closed. All right, so now let's take so these are the pieces I cut out. I do want to cut one more gray granite piece, a circle, because it's a lighter color to stamp on. So let me cut that really quick. Okay, so I've cut same size, and these are like 3 inches. So I'm actually going to keep all of these. I'm going to glue them together once I get my stamping done. So we're going to do the Lost Lagoon. We're going to do the new Pebbled Path. We're going to do the new Copper Clay. I'm in a neutral kind of mood. Usually I'm kind of like the bright colors, and regal colors, but these in colors are really growing on me, the neutral. Even that wild wheat. It's not my favorite, but it's growing on me. I don't mind the cardstock for accent pieces. Okay, so let's do our leaf. in the Lost Lagoon. And I'm just gonna kind of do this a little bit off to the side. And then I'm just cleaning it with the chamois. And then I'm gonna do this kind of more flower field one in the Pebbled Path. And then this other little branch one I'm going to do in the copper clay. And then a little trick I wanted to show you, because if you notice on my sample I had that little gilded leafing, that little gold. I'm going to show you how to do that speckled look on your card. Okay, so what I'm going to take is some of my liquid glue. I'm going to take my little silicone mat. I'm going to put a little bit of glue, the liquid glue, on my silicone mat. I've got an old aqua painter, water painter. This one, it's I just kind of use it for more of my media stuff, not for watercoloring. So it's got water in it. I'm just going to add a little bit of water. I've got a drop here. And make sure my brush is all got lots of this liquid glue with the water on it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a bone folder and I'm going to do a little bit of splattering with this glue. Because the gilded leafing, it needs something to stick to. And so this is forming, and then if you want to go in and add just a little bit of marks, you can add a little bit more glue. Pick up some water, and then if you want to do a little drawing, so the gilded leafing, it just needs something to stick to. We'll do a little bit more glue, a little bit of water. Might have got a little bit too much water on this one. Let's try this again. And I would recommend, just because the splatter is everywhere, that you just make sure your work area is cleaned off. And then just make sure you clean off, get that glue off of that brush, otherwise it'll get hardened. So just rinse that off. And I'm just going to clean off my silicone mat so I don't have that glue drying on there. Then you're going to take the gilded leafing, which if you haven't used this, it is, oh my gosh, it goes everywhere. So it's super, super fine and fluffy. I can open this without it flying everywhere. And it's just this super thin, really fun kind of foil that we're going to use. So I put it into a tray just to kind of keep track of that so it doesn't go all over my desk. And then I'm going to pick up some, and I'm just going to kind of dab and pounce, kind of where I had that glue, kind of burnishing it in. So kind of twisting, dab, dab, pounce. Then you're going to pick off some of the bigger chunks and put it back in the container. then you can either just use your fingers and you just kind of burnish, or you can take a sponge. You can take like a stipple brush or a stencil brush and just lightly kind of brush off some of that excess leafing. And then when you get done, I just kind of, again, just rub it in there with my fingers. Isn't that pretty? It just adds a little bit of glimmer and shine. And this stuff lasts forever. I've had this for a few years now. I think Stampin' Up! Came out with it, oh gosh, it might have been like 2 or 3 years ago. So, and then these little fine pieces, you can just put it back into your container. Like I said, it goes everywhere. So I recommend when you're working with it, do not sneeze. And then very carefully put the lid back on. And I wound up putting mine in a Gladware container just so it was a little bit easier to work with, because it comes in a jar. But I just found that it was easier to work with it in that Gladware container. And then I just take a soft cloth. This is just a 3M, kind of one of the, well, it's an electronics cloth, but, and I'm just going to kind of buff and get off any of that excess little pieces. Okay, so now that's all finished. So now I'm going to take those extra circles that I had cut out when we did our card. I'm going to layer these all behind this piece just to give it a little bit of support. So we're just going to do a little bit of the Lagoon behind it. And then the last layer, because the inside of my card is Pebbled Path, I'm doing this Pebbled Path on the back layer because that's what's going to show. And then I just take a nail file. These are what ones where I had to use my hobby blade, and I'm just kind of sanding those down so the edges are smooth. Okay, get the gilded leafing off that. All right, so now let's go ahead and put our pivot piece onto our card. So as I've been playing around with this, I did find that it was easier to put a dimensional on here rather than trying to mess with glue again. So I'm just using up some dimensionals, and I'm just going to use, you know, the little border piece here. And what is that, about 2? That should fit. Just using up there, finishing off my pack of dimensionals, and I'm just going to put my dimensionals on this little arm. And I may have to trim just a little bit off. And then while the card's closed, you're then going to put your pivot piece onto that arm. And there you got it. Now you've got that little pivot, the pop-up pivot card. So fun. I love it, love it, love it. So that is it for that fun fold. So thanks for watching. I will be working on some other tutorials using some new products and stuff from the Stampin' Up! Annual Catalog. So thanks again. Have a great day, and I will stamp again with you soon. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.